so far, the Copyright Office and the courts are taking the position that purely AI-generated art, including music, is not protected by copyright if there's no human involvement. So how do you see that rolling out? Is that a real concern, or is there always going to be some human involvement in the creation of music, so that there can be a sort of a workaround and still get copyright protection?
Right, absolutely. I think even in the copyright guidelines, they have mentioned that if there is sufficient human expression involved in the process of using the AI tools, it can still be considered copyrightable. And I think that's definitely going to be the next step. If the Midjourney and Stable Diffusion are examples to go by, the first thing that anybody does is enter a prompt and hit enter and get a result. Now, when the cost of creating an idea is so cheap, you're going to do thousands and thousands of them, and then pick and select the one that you want to represent as your idea, right? And this would not be copyrightable currently because you just hit a slot machine and got a result. But we're already seeing that if you are an artist, you want to uniquely identify your style, right? You want to develop an identity. You want to make that context be the reason why your art has value and why your fans respect and love you. And if the result of the piece of art, the AI art is just the slot machine that anybody can create, I already see artists trying to use it as a tool within their flow work of music making or image making. And therefore, the AI parts kind of blend in with many other aspects of their workflow. And we see that because the AI tools are getting deployed within existing softwares that people use. So I might record my music in an audio workstation, and I have certain plugins for adding effects to the piece of music I'm working on. I might just as that have another extra effect to use AI to generate a few ideas, but then I swap it in my workflow. So it's going to be hard to differentiate that AI was the only one creating. And I think the onus is on the artist, because an artist is going to go to the Copyright Office and say, I want my work protected. And they are going to have to describe which parts were AI, which parts were human made. It would be great if technology as well as the law supported making these kind of claims. Like if there was a clear way of recording provenance where you can, along with your piece of music, when you export and get a piece of music, you also get like a receipt that these were the AI models used, these were the non-AI parts used. That would make it great to go to the Copyright Office and say, here's my music, here's the standard form of representing all the edits I have done and how much AI had a role to play. And the Copyright Office would also be really happy with that. So I see that technologies that would allow a recording of what parts were AI, what parts were human, will benefit both artists and the Copyright Office. So the first initial ruling that purely AI generated work are not copyrightable may not have like a huge role to play.
And that could be the exception, not the rule, as you're saying.
Right. I think,
but Judith, you could carry this conversation forward a bit more, but I'm just imagining as you were speaking, I was imagining, well, let's say a musician comes up with a little melody, like one measure melody. And then he asks AI to generate some chords or harmonies to go with it. Okay. And so now he's got a melody, he's got the harmonies. Does he have to say to the Copyright Office, I wrote the melody, AI wrote the harmony? What if he adjusts the harmony a little bit? What if he changes a note or two in the chord structure? Now, is it his and not AI's? So I don't know. Judith, what would you can speak to that more technically than I can.
Well, yeah, just to add to that, Manaswi, I was thinking about this. So say if you did submit it to the Copyright Office with a sort of a breakdown of the elements that were AI created. I mean, it could have sort of 3 columns: AI created, human created, and combination, extended from the AI
hybrid.
created.
AI assisted.
The hybrid. I mean, but But instead, since the Copyright Office is fairly, kind of agnostic in the way it looks at this, and it doesn't delve into the originality of materials, they've never seen that as their role. So
Mhm.
I'm wondering instead if they will start to see it as simply a tool, the same way that you would have used, a digital, a workstation is really a production tool. It's really enhancing what you've created by the various sound effects and timbres and, orchestration selections, and even the note generation after your first measure that Don was suggesting. So what do you think about, how do you think they'll look at it? Will they require more documentation, so you have to prove the human contribution? Or will instead they just see this as a tool like any instrument or, recording production possibility?
Right. And I know it's super important to like future-proof ideas, especially when you're talking about these technologies. So just referring to them as a tool rather than making an exception to what an AI tool is might be in their interest. But then it'll just boil down to each individual idea then being fought later on. Perhaps if it makes a lot of money, somebody comes along and says our software was used in it, and then just case by case battling it, I guess, might also make sense. There are so many pieces of music already which have used the preset of a software or like a keyboard that has like a demo button. You press the demo button and it produces a sample, and people just use that directly in their music.
You can already command it, right, to create permutations, variations of the melody you've created. Right. You might say, give me 5 permutations of this 1-bar melody that I created. Right. So who wrote those permutations?
In many ways, I think it's been similar to if you start writing a story and you use ChatGPT to write your story, I bet there's a big difference in telling ChatGPT to just write the story and then it writes the story versus using it as a creative way that the ChatGPT will be a character and I'll write down the roles of other characters and they kind of interact. Some of the dialogue is written by AI, but it's a tool within my creative expression. That could be another completely different way. And what we are talking about here is asking ChatGPT to give me 5 romantic ideas. Then I pick the one I like, then say, make variations of this. And I think in all of these different ways of expressing in 2023 and beyond, I think transparency is the key. I think artists would want it so that they get credit when it's due. The Copyright Office's work will be easy if there's more transparency and they can really compare case by case in the future. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, especially since this is happening at the same time as the technology is evolving. So it's not clear to know which is the best techniques to use.